Well, so I was not sure exactly what to say, but fortunately, Katie's talk could have been given by me, except for, some specifics like what they're doing with the procurement. But we've been through the same kind of thing at the high level. What she said is exactly what we're doing, that we're not focused on peak flops and things like that. So let me, what I decided to do was more of a breadth rather than depth. We've done things with the mic and things like that, but I wanted to give you a feel for what the kinds of things we're doing, including going out into the future. So this is the NASA Advanced Supercomputing Division. I'm the division chief there. And in terms of advanced computing, we do several things. I'm going to touch briefly on all of these, not all of these, but a lot of these, just to give you an idea of the breadth of things that we are trying to support within the division. Things which are really looking further into the future, like quantum computing, to what is currently useful for you, people like you. So the NAS Division Pro is the primary supercomputer center for all of NASA. And so we have to meet all of NASA's requirements. That includes things like the high throughput capacity capability, where, for example, they're doing aero databases and they're running thousands of small cases, 1,000 core cases, 2,000 core cases, or even smaller than that. And they're filling up a database. So we have to have throughput to be able to support that. On the other hand, we also have to have leadership capability where people are running 10, 20, 30,000 core jobs, okay? And then the last thing is that we are, at certain times, need to be highly available. For example, when the shuttle was going up, every time the shuttle went up, a part of the system was reserved so that if you had a problem in the shuttle, for example, a tile came off or a blanket came off, they needed to do quick analysis to figure out what the potential effect could be. So we had to have high availability for that. Or, for example, we were part of a hurricane tracking project. This was back a few years, and every 4 hours we had to provide simulation results so that they could be fed into multiple results to track hurricanes. So we are slightly different from some of the other supercomputer centers where they focus only on leadership kind of thing. We have to support all of NASA's requirements. And just as an example, this starts off at the level of, for example, rotorcraft design, where this is showing the turbulence in the rotorcraft, or space launch systems design, SLS vehicles on the other side. So aeronautics, crew vehicle design, space launch system designs, and also science mission directorate, where we focus on things like hurricane or weather simulation or ocean modeling, earth science kind of projects, and then heliophysics, solar physics, and astrophysics. So astrophysics, I would suspect, is about 12 to 15% of our usage. So it's a fairly large set of users, and so that's why I was saying what Katie said sort of reflected the same kinds of things that we see in our environment. So I'm not going to go through the level Katie went in terms of the mic performance and things like that, just to give you a high-level view. Our biggest system, like Joel just said, is currently at 184,000. We just went through augmentation, and we're up to 3.6 petaflops, so 20% augmentation in the last 3 months. We are more in the mode of augmenting our system. So this system actually started off in 2008, and we have been adding to it, retiring some of the old Harper Towns, for example, because of power and cooling constraints. And so at this point, there are 3 generations of Intel Xeons in there, the Westmere's, the Sandy Bridges, and the Ivy Bridges, and actually 2 generations of InfiniBand FDR and DDR to connect all this in a hypercube formation. And that formation actually gives us the capability of adding more racks without actually taking the whole system down. So this kind of a rolling upgrade we do all the time. that 64 nodes is supposed to be 64 nodes of GPU in between there. We're currently number 16 on the top 500, but that was back in November before this augmentation. So this is our main workhorse, the 3.6 petaflop Pleiades system. But we have some smaller systems. Endeavor, this is a shared memory system. So like Joel was saying, there are two nodes in there. One is 1,000 core with 4 terabytes of shared memory, and another is 512 cores with 2 terabytes of memory, which allows single system image for doing two kinds of things, running pure OpenMP codes, or for running codes where people really require huge memories to do that. And we actually looked at, like for example, at UCSD, the software solutions and things like that, ScaleMP, and found that the hardware solution was much better to provide that shared memory. Our shared memory usage is about 5%, so we have small systems to support the focus for people who are doing that. And then, like Katie was saying, we have a couple of testbed systems, Xeon Phi based systems. One is 128 node, the other is 64 node, similar to what I think Katie was saying. And I could have given that same talk, except it wouldn't have been Flash. It would have been Overflow and some of the other code, Geos 5 and things like that. Exactly the same kind of issues we found, that the performance is not there at this point. And so we, in this latest augmentation, just eschewed all use of mics and said, let's just go with the Ivy Bridges and wait for the next version, test bed that, and then see if that is useful for our users. Because again, like NERSC, we're not focused on the peak petaflops, we are focused on the amount of work that gets done on these things. Okay, so we do have a balanced system. We have a fair amount of storage and wide area network and things like that. The other thing, we do provide support, and I think Joel would look at that maybe. The visualization support that we provide, we have a big visualization engine. The engine itself is 128 node based on NVIDIA graphics cards, but it is fronted by 128 screens, which we use in two different modes actually. One is that large image mode, which everybody uses, power walls and things like that. But we also have the visualization group has set up software so that you can use it in a parameter space study mode, where you can take 128 images, you've got multi-dimensional data, you can choose 2 of your dimensions and spread it across the 2 dimensions of your 128 8 by 16, and you can pan within those 2 dimensions, or you can push back and forth in the 3rd dimension. And they're all synchronized, obviously, so it gives you a better way of looking at the data and trying to see where you're getting the kinds of implications. And this has been useful for several scientists who actually found issues with their system much easier than having to spread slides across the table or something like that. The other thing we do is, in addition to sort of traditional post-processing, is concurrent visualization, where a small library has been written which can be attached to the code and runs some threads to grab data at every iteration, for example, dump it down from the Pleiades supercomputer down to the visualization engine so that the rendering gets done there independently of the computation without affecting the computation. And you get a lot of temporal fidelity because you can see the results at every time step, rather than the usual case of dumping it out every 10,000 times or 1,000 time steps or something like that. So I just wanted to show, I asked my folks, I'm not a scientist, I'm a computer scientist, and as they say, if you have science in the name of your subjects, you're not doing science. So I don't do science, okay? So I asked my folks to give me a couple of visualizations, and I hope I can get this started. Okay, looks like it. So this is from Paulo at UCSD, Paulo Pardon's work. They're using our Pleiades machine. And you guys understand this better than I do. It's some kind of star formulation. So I see pretty pictures, color density, and how the stars will be formed. The visualization was done by Chris Henze and Tim Stans from our division. You may be able to explain this. Yeah. So this was about 50 terabytes of data, 500 time steps of his code, I think, and 50 terabytes of data. Okay, let me go to the next one, which is okay, so I think if I understand this correctly, this is sort of a two-part simulation. The first part is just an image and this zooming into the central core, again a star formulation. And then once they get to the sort of a fly-through, so this is the first part is just a fly-through. And then they will start looking at the actual within the core. And again, you guys know this better than I can ever explain it to you. So this is from Dr. Klein here at Berkeley. Again, the visualization has been done by. So one of the things that we do, like Katie is saying, we have a fairly large consulting group where we provide the support to the users all the way through, starting from code optimization to actually running the codes to visualization. So this comes with the allocation. Again, people don't pay for the runs. With the allocation, you get the support and okay. So let me switch topics now. So like I said, I could have given a similar talk like Katie did, all the mic performances and things like that. But I'm going to switch over to something that we're starting. And I think this is sort of following in the steps of Mike Norm, UCSD. NASA has enormous collections of data. You saw what we can do with simulation data. In fact, we just ran a 35-core ocean modeling, which produced about 1.5 petabytes of data in its 5-day run. And that was only a small run. We actually expected to produce 9 to 18 petabytes of data. So we have a lot of model and simulation data. In addition, we have a lot of observational data. There's some estimates there are 100 plus active satellites at any time, producing about 50 petabytes of data per year. Okay? And these are satellites that are looking out towards the sun, towards the planet, and things like that, and satellites looking in towards the Earth. Okay? These are mostly placed in different distribution centers. The Earth Science operates about 12 DACs, as they call it, focused on different kinds of data from different satellites. And similarly, there's a Space Science Data Center and other data centers. So there's a lot of data. People do get access to the data, but there is no concerted, coordinated effort to provide support for doing data science within NASA. A lot of the analysis that is being done in NASA is more sort of analysis rather than any kind of analytics. I don't see anybody doing real analytics on the data in terms of anomaly detection or things like that. This is more, you set up a hypothesis and run it through the data. So in the last few months, I have started a project at Ames to look at what kind of infrastructure we can provide for big data science, which is sort of separated out from the, we do a lot of support for high simulation, high performance simulation, and we have a lot of storage, 20 petabytes of storage that we have within the center, but we don't really provide support for the whole workflow for a data scientist. And so the first things I did was I asked for a survey of several projects, and actually that survey, we just published that last week. It's available on our website. And some of the things that we found, that the computing part is obviously a big problem for all these guys, but there's more to data science than pure simulation. Okay? It starts off from the point of how do I know where what data I need and how do I find it? Okay? There's no metadata available for this. Okay? There are no tools for discovering the data. Once I know where the data is, how do I have easy mechanisms for actually transporting the data to where I need to compute it? Tools for analytics, those kind of things. Most of NASA data is gridded and is more structured. So the tools that you see in the social networking business don't really work for us. Hadoop doesn't seem to be the right approach for doing this. On the other hand, there are some parts of the workflow where Hadoop and those kind of things could work. Okay? So what is the right infrastructure to need? That's the kind of goal that I'm trying to get at. Shared memory systems, are they good for it? So for example, when we were doing this survey, after that what we've done is we've taken 2 or 3 of these scenarios and we're doing a deep dive in each of those scenarios, getting these people to actually run prototypes. And so for example, on Pleiades or on our shared memory systems, we're going to set up a Hadoop cluster also, so that people can try different things, and then based on that we can develop the actual requirements and the environment that is needed to serve the entire workflow for these data scientists. Obviously, we'll leverage a lot of software that comes from other folks because we can't develop everything in our environment. But what we want to try and provide is an environment where the data scientists can do their work. And that actually includes a collaboration environment. So one of the first steps, I'm going to switch gears again and give you something. I should have taken the activation. This is a project that has been going on for a couple of years now. It's called the NASA Earth Exchange. It is a collaboration environment for Earth scientists. Okay? Like we said, there's a lot of Earth science data there, but everybody is busy doing things on their own, grabbing data from their own, and there is no one space where they can talk to each other. So the focus here is to engage and to enable. We want to engage the wider Earth science community, people who may not be directly related to the NASA, doing NASA projects. And once we've engaged them, we want to provide them with the resources, both compute and data, to be able to do their work and get their missions done. So just to give you an overview, it's sort of a 3-tier system. We have a collaboration portal with currently about 400 users on it, and people can set up their projects and things like that and say, here's my papers, here's my tools that I use, here's the data products that I might have, and things like that. The idea is that you can discuss this, you can share it, and things like that. So that's and that's open to almost any Earth scientist. You have a Gmail ID, you can get access to it. At the second level, we have some compute resources. Obviously, we have the big HPC systems, which are used when you scale your models. But we also provide what we call a sandbox, so that people can try their models at a smaller scale while having access to all the data repository that is there at the end. And so we have about 1.3 petabytes of data, Earth science data, which is available to these guys, so that they can run their models on this. Now, the access to the sandbox also is fairly restricted at this point. The access to HPC is based on allocation done by the mission directors, but the sandbox we can control. The NASA restrictions doesn't allow anybody to get onto that sandbox. So one of the things that we've done is we have a memorandum of understanding with Amazon. We've taken about 50 to 60 terabytes of data and put it on Amazon. And they're providing that for free for a year, where anybody can go access it and run their models, do their simulations or whatever by paying for the compute costs without having to pay for the data costs. Now, how far can we push that? I don't know. It depends on whether Amazon. So what we're trying to do in-house is trying to mimic that structure. Okay? We cannot give it openly to anybody, but we want to try and give it to at least folks who, from university, for example, to be able to come in and use our sandbox, get access to the one, and we're going to grow the 1.3 petabytes, get access to all the data there, and run the models. The idea is that once they run it, they should be able to share that. So one of the things that, one of the, I think, exciting projects that they're working on is a workflow management system. You run your workflow, you capture your workflow, you store your workflow along with all the image. Now you can share the image itself, and somebody else can come and you publish it in your paper. There's a link in your paper to that particular workflow image. You go there and you say, this guy's done that. You go grab that image and you can run his workflow to see whether what kind of data he produced and how he produced it. You want to tweak it a little bit and run your algorithm instead of the one that was in the paper. That's, or you want to run that workflow on a different data set. Well, that could be done also. So that's one of the pieces of the collaboration that we're doing. So this is a collaboration portal that has been running for a couple of years, and we're trying to expand its use and expand its vision so that not only does it engage a wider set of community, but it does provide them with much more compute resources along with the data resources to do what's needed. Okay, again, switching gears, I'm going to switch to something completely different. And this is a laboratory that we set up. It's called the Quantum Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. This is a collaboration with the NASA, Google, and an association called University Space Research Association. And what they has done is Google has bought us what they call a quantum computer and placed it within our division. So we actually host the system in our basement. Okay? This is a D-Wave 2 system. This was built in Vancouver, and it's based on a 512 qubit processor. A qubit is a quantum bit, sort of analogous to a regular bit, except that these are niobium superconducting loops, which basically, depending on the direction of the electric current, could be showing magnetic field up or down. And because of the fact, and that you sort of say 0 or 1, choosing the particular direction, because they are down at the temperature in that, so here's the processor. It's not very clear, but this picture here is it's sort of like a upside down layer cake where they keep reducing the temperature so that the temperature at the chip itself is about 10 to 15 millikelvins. And at that point, these niobium loops start showing quantum effects. So there is superposition. So the direction of the magnetic field is not known until you actually read it. And at that point, it becomes. So you've got that. Then you also have supposedly entanglement. And now there's some amount of controversy in the literature as to whether this is actually a quantum computer or not. D-Wave obviously claims that it is. So it's not clear whether quantum entanglements are actually applicable here or not. A couple of other physical issues. Because of the fact that the Earth's magnetic field will affect the performance, this layer cake with the chip is enclosed in a 10 by 10 by 10 Faraday shielding box, so that the magnetic field inside is about 1 nanotesla, about 1/50,000th of the Earth's magnetic field. The focus of this whole machine is discrete optimization problems, and basically using a quantum annealing algorithm, where the quantum annealing, and again, I'm not exactly sure how all this works, but most annealing problems, classical annealing problems, you can run from one. When you're doing optimization, you're trying to find the minima, you sort of jump from the simulated annealing, you make jumps from here to here, but in quantum annealing, you're just basically tunneling so that you're hoping to get to the optimal minima through that process. So this is what the machine is good at, doing quantum annealing problems. So how do you program these things? What you do is you take your discrete optimization problem and you form it into what is called a QBO form, a quantum unconstrained binary optimization problem. I don't understand the physics enough to tell you what it is, but basically what is happening here is these are the sort of coupling factors, and the Zi, Zj represent the bits on the nodes of the graph, and the Qis represent the coupling on the graph. and you're given the coupling, which represents your problem plus your constraints. And you let the machine actually figure out what the Zi's, Zj's are, such that this is the minimized energy state. How this works on the machine itself is the machine is made up of modules 8 with 8 qubits. These 8 qubits are connected like this. It's a chimera graph, and then the modules are connected like this. So there are about 14, this is a 512 qubit system with about 1,400 connections between them, 1,400 plus connections. So what happens is you have to take this and you have to map this graph that you have onto this. And so sometimes when you're doing that, a node in this graph may have more edges going out of it than the number that is provided here, for example, about 5 or 6 at the max. And so you may have to coalesce several of the physical nodes to represent one of the nodes in this graph. So what happens is that you start off, for example, with a problem like the traveling salesman problem, which is one of the optimization problems you would solve on this. A 7-city traveling salesman problem converts into about a 400 plus qubit representation. So that's about the maximum size of the problems that you can solve. So because you are going from, you're putting in the constraints so that 7 cities with the constraints becomes about 30 odd node graph here, which then converts into a 400 plus node graph there. Then what happens? How does that work? Once you have that cube, you start these qubits in some known energy minimization state with a known coupling. And you then change the coupling slowly and steadily by very minute steps while keeping the energy state to be the minimum until you reach that the specified Q level. Once you reach that specified Q level, then you read the bits, and that's your answer. Okay? And I'm giving you at the 10,000 foot level. There's obviously lots of stuff that's going on that I don't understand. And what happens is that, but this is all a probabilistic quantum effect. So the answer you get may not be the correct answer. So you run thousands of times, and you hope that you get a bell curve with the answer. What you want is right in the middle of the... And also, your embeddings affect how things will happen. And there are also approximations within the machine, and that all affect the way the results go. So that's why you run thousands of cases, and each case takes about 20 microseconds to run. So it's not a lot of time. Once you've said, all you have to specify is your Q's, and out you get your Z's. And that's, so most of the problem is to set up the problem and then map it up into the graph. Okay? Now, obviously, this is not going to solve your problems today. The hope is that as we go along, there are a lot of NASA problems that fall into this category that we can look at it as a discrete optimization problem. This includes planning and scheduling problems. Somebody is actually looking at, if I have a large machine like a Pleiades machine, and there are little holes everywhere, and I want to map my problem into that, what is the best topologically aware problem to map my computational graph in there to reduce the communication hops that I have to take? You know, so things like that. That's a very specific problem. The larger level, you've got data fusion problems, air traffic management problems. People are looking at anomaly detection and things like that. So this is a machine that's come online in the last few months. People are getting their feet wet. We're hoping that as we go, we'll learn more. This is at the level of assembly language back when ILIAC was there, and we really couldn't do real astrophysics on it. Hopefully one day you will do some kind of astrophysics. Okay, so I think that's all. I've given you a very broad overview of different things that we've done, quantum, going far out to quantum, collaboration work, and our feet on the ground, HPC, where we support the kinds of work that you saw Katie talking about. That's exactly the kind of support we have. I saw at least 2 or 3 people who were listed on who use our machine. So if you have any questions, and if you have any questions later on, you can always send me email.